So we're coming to the end of the year. I hope you've had a good year. My little buddy walking around in the background here. But as we get closer to the end of the year, I know a lot of people have had really good years, but they may not made as much money as they thought. There's questions around inflation. There's questions around tariffs still. When's it going to end? Either or. And if you've been wondering about inflation and tariffs and how that might be affecting your small business, I'm going to try to break it down and distill it down for you on the show today. Welcome to the KeyHire Small Business Podcast. I'm your host, Corey Harlock, creator of KeyHire, where we help small business grow with our talent. Before we dive into the show today, a couple quick asks. Please, our mission is to help spread this show to small business owners. And if you're watching us on YouTube or you're listening on Spotify or Apple, if you could subscribe or follow or whatever you have to do, that helps the algorithm recommend us to other people. And so we can get our message out to other small business owners. We'd appreciate it if you could help us out by liking or subscribing, whatever that is. If you're feeling really extra while you're listening to the show, if you scroll into the show notes, the first line says, text us your comments or show ideas. Shoot us a text. Let us know what you think of the show or any ideas you have for the show, topics you'd like us to cover, or guests you'd like us to have on the show. And we'll go out and find them for you. And then underneath that text, the third thing is you can connect with me on LinkedIn. Hit that link, go to LinkedIn, hit the connect with Corey button, and I will gladly accept that. Just leave me a note like, hey, I love the podcast, so I know where you're coming from, and I'll gladly accept that connection request. A little bit of housekeeping as well. We did a show 2 weeks ago on the EAD program and how they were getting rid of the period in between while you were renewing your EAD and covering you up, and they were removing that cushion. And when your EAD was up, so was your ability to work. And it was actually a very really good response to that show. A lot of people shared it and liked it, and I'm really appreciate all of that. It got a lot of good interaction, and we did get a little feedback. So Richard O said, made it a little political, but those laws and penalties are useless unless they're enforced. True. But, stay on the safe side of it. They might not be enforcing it everywhere, but they may enforce it with you. And as we said, those financial penalties and potentially down the road jail time is not worth it. Just make sure you cover yourself up, take care of yourself. Okay, let's try to get into this. The inflation and tariff conversation here. So the current rate of inflation year over year is 2.9%. And so it's down from pandemic highs, but it's still 0.9% above the 2% target of the Federal Reserve. And small businesses feel like they're experiencing even higher inflation than the headline number suggests. 59% of small business owners report that they feel that cost pressures are rising, and most small business owners are expecting about a 3% inflation in 2026. So a little bit up from what they've been feeling where they are. But what's really interesting is 46% of small business owners cite inflation is their number one concern. So we're 9% over the target. We're down from pandemic levels, but almost half of small business owners are still really concerned about inflation. And then we have these other things that we're dealing with called tariffs. I'm sure you've heard about them. If you haven't, you may want to look them up. But tariffs obviously are a hidden tax. And 67% of small businesses say they've been directly impacted by tariffs in the last 12 months. So that's kind of a secondary inflation pressure that you're getting beyond economic inflation. Now, tariffs did raise $88 billion this year, which is a lot of money. And small businesses were definitely affected by that. and some of them say that they're paying rates the rates they were paying nearly doubled previous levels. So that's substantial within a business. If you're doubling the cost of goods, that's definitely going to affect your business. It's kind of crazy. So the compounding effect, tariffs increase input costs. So then business raise price, consumers pay more, workers demand higher wages because they have to pay more to live, businesses have to raise their costs again, and we get into this vicious circle. And so that's something we need to be mindful of, and we're going to get into how to kind of deal with that as we go through some recommendations, kind of how to deal with this whole situation. The average small business said they faced $90,000 in tariff costs from April to July of 2025 alone. So April, May, June, July, that's like 1/3 of the year. Mind you, the tariffs weren't there all year. So, July through the rest of the year, that could be another $90,000 plus as well. That's real money. And so the result of all of this is 50% of small businesses report being hit harder by tariffs in 25 than they did in 2024, obviously. And that's creating sustained cost pressure, even as the general inflation has moderated, right? That general inflation has come down, which should have been a little bit of a reprieve or a little exhale for our business owners. But then we got these tariffs in there, and that kind of drove prices up a little more on them. And now we're trying to find the equilibrium here. Where is this all going to end? So small businesses face this double squeeze, or general inflation plus tariff-driven cost increases. And so their profit margins are under pressure. Average small business profit margins are 7 to 10%. That doesn't leave you a lot of room for error. If you're only running, if you're running less than 7% margins, you're really just kind of running the cycle of taking everything you make, putting it back into the business so you can keep the doors open. And when your profit margins are 7 to 10, 12, 15%, and you have tariffs that you have to pay for, $90,000 worth in 4 months, plus 0.9% inflation over the expected. These are all ways. I have one client who says we want to find someone who can save us pennies, right? Just these small little expenses that add up to thousands and thousands of dollars. That's all sounds like doom and gloom. There is a silver lining here. Despite all these challenges, 65% of small businesses remain profitable, and 87% are meeting or exceeding the expectations they had laid out for 2025. So it's showing resilience in the market, but I'm sure there's been a ton of strategic adaptation behind this. I hope that all made sense. But small business owners are outperforming what they thought they were going to do. Meanwhile, they're battling tariffs and they're battling increased inflation. So there are some definitions for you. That's what we're dealing with. So what are some of the mistakes a small business owner could make in this climate right now, where we have inflation is about 30, or I guess 50% higher than it should be, right? If the target is 2%, we're currently at 2.9, or was it 3%? Yeah. So we're at 2.9. So we're actually 50% higher than target. Plus we've introduced these tariffs, which are costing business owners $90,000 every 4 months. So to the end of the year, it could cost you $180,000 over the course of the year on average. That's real money. We definitely want to make sure we're putting a plan in place. So these business owners are overperforming, their margins are shrinking. And are you getting into this cycle where you're just kind of opening the doors to make enough money to pay the bills, to keep the doors open? And I hope you're not in that situation, but here are some mistakes you might make during this time. Excuse me. What the biggest mistake you can make is trying to absorb all these costs and not adjust prices. So that means you're just kind of saying, okay, I'll take this $90,000 hit. I'm going to take this inflation. I'm going to take the increased cost of my raw goods or whatever I'm bringing in to make my product or deliver my service. And I don't want to raise prices because I don't want my customers to think I'm trying to gouge them, right? If your profit margins, if your cost is rising by 3, 5, 7%, and your profit margin is 7 to 10%, you can start doing the math here, right? You're going to get into that danger zone and realize that your margins are going to be unsustainable. And that's where we get into this cycle of opening the door just to make enough money, just to keep the doors open. Maybe you can't even pay yourself. You're paying your staff, but you're taking a pay cut, whatever it is. We don't want to fall into that cycle. So we don't want to just absorb the cost, which leads into mistake number 2. We don't want to make panic-based price increases without strategy. That means we're just going to raise everything by 20%. We're just going to bill everyone more than 20%, and we're not going to communicate that effectively. When you raise prices dramatically and suddenly without communicating to your clients, you're going to shock them. And no one likes that kind of shock. No one likes it when you put your hand into someone's pocket and take out more money than you should. So they're going to react to that, and they might start shopping, right? They might say, well, these guys just went crazy. They raised their prices. Maybe there's better pricing out there. And so if you're going to do across the board percentage increase, which is probably what you want to do, if your costs have gone up 7 to 10%, then you should maybe raise your product or your service 7 to 10%. But we also want to make sure if you're just doing it without a strategy, you're going to upset your clients, you're going to face customer backlash, you're going to lose loyal customers, and you're going to damage your brand and your reputation. So don't just say, we're just going to roll out a price increase across the board, just do it and we'll deal with the repercussions, right? No, don't make panic-based price increases. The third mistake you can make here is, failing to diversify your supply chain and start negotiating with vendors. I know a lot of small businesses have the feeling, attitude is the wrong word, but they feel like because we're not a big player, we don't buy a lot of stuff from these guys. We're a small business. We don't have a lot of clout and we don't have a lot of negotiating power. Well, you do. And now is the time to start utilizing that, right? So make some calls. If you increase your price without a strategy and shock your clients by raising your prices, they're going to shop your product. They're going to go out and see who else can we talk to, who else can give us a better price on this. And if your suppliers are doing that to you, then they should expect you to do the same. So this is a great opportunity for you to go out and look at domestic alternatives or different countries. If you're importing from one of the heavily tariffed countries, maybe you can find one that's not as heavily tariffed, or you can find a local supplier. You can go to your current suppliers and say, hey, we need to renegotiate this, or what kind of deal can you make for me? So far we've talked about just absorbing the costs or doing a cost increase across the board without strategy. We don't want to fail to diversify our supply chain. We also don't want to ignore the tariff policy landscape. So 64% of small business owners list this as kind of their top concern. The mistake would be to just say, we'll just wait for all this to change and we'll get back to normal. Now's the time to, you might want to look at modeling some different scenarios, right? We're looking at some different suppliers. Maybe we're looking at national US-based providers. So this is a great time to start modeling different scenarios. If we use someone from a lower tariff rate country or an American supplier, and we pay a little more now, what does that look like when the tariffs come down? So you want to start, don't fail to model all these scenarios and understand where things are coming from, what your options are, and what it's going to look like as these tariffs change. AI is a great way to do this. You can even use talk to text. Just hit that little microphone button and ask them, right? Where are the best tariff rates, or what other countries supply these products and what are their tariff rates? What's the outlook on those countries? How are things going to change? What would it cost to? You can prompt AI to get all of this amazing information out for you. And you'll be amazed how accurate it could be. At the end of the day, the biggest mistake you can make is just having this too shall pass attitude and not take any action. Don't wait for inflation and tariffs to magically resolve themselves. I feel like we're in a very stable place here in the US, but also it's very unstable, right? These tariffs are kind of going up and down randomly or based on the government's decision. Inflation is a funny thing. We don't know if it's going to drop. It was supposed to come down. Some things have come down. Some things have gone back up, probably because of tariffs. And so we're in flux right now. So just trying to wait it out, especially if you're in that low margin business or the tariffs and inflation are eating away at that margin and you're in that vicious cycle of just trying to keep the doors open. Start taking some action. Don't get stuck just assuming this is your fate and we're just going to ride this out. Being unprepared when the next economic shock hits is when 40% of businesses with $100,000 in debt face cash flow crisis. So I don't know where you are with your cash flow, but if you don't have $100,000 in the bank on average, and one other shoe kind of drops here, you could find yourself with a challenge. So maybe some financial markers we could look at are, if you're less than 7% profit margin right now, if you have less than $100,000 in the bank, and if you haven't increased prices or you're just kind of riding this thing out, you might be sitting in a very vulnerable spot. So let's kind of talk about how you might be able to stabilize your business a little bit here. The first thing you're going to do, we talked about, don't just do across the board price hike without a strategy. And I have lots of clients that did this. When the tariffs came in, they did a strategic and transparent price adjustment. And they essentially sent a note to all of their customers and said, hey, with the tariffs, our price is going to go up, and we are only going to mark up our product what that is, right? What that 7 to 10% extra cost to us is. And as the tariffs go away and as inflation comes down, we're going to lower that price back down. And that was very well received. They communicated proactively, and they let them know that they want to maintain the quality, which is really important. Want to make sure we can take care of our workers, so we can put out quality products and we can get them to you on time. Another thing you can consider with this strategy of transparent price adjustment is you might be able to bundle extra stuff in, so you can give your customers a little more without charging more. Or because you're charging that 7 to 10% more based on tariffs and inflation, you might say, hey, this is going to cover the cost, our extra costs, but we understand it's inconvenient for you, so we're going to throw in a little extra something. I don't know what that would be, depending on your business, but if you can find something small, businesses certainly appreciate it. And I think it shows that you're genuinely, trying to help them out and work with them and want to make sure you're maintaining that partnership. The second thing you can do is build supply chain resilience and reduce tariff exposure. The good news is we just went through this with COVID, and a lot of people had to kind of readjust their supply chain. If you didn't do it over COVID and you weren't affected, now is a great time to do that. You start with auditing your supply chain. So you want to identify which products and materials are most affected by tariffs, right? What country are they coming from, or is it a certain item that's heavily tariffed? And then you want to diversify those suppliers. And we talked about that a little earlier on around, is there a local or a national supplier that can get it to you? Or is there another country, maybe nearshored country, right? South America, versus getting it over in Asia. That's less tariff that you could start building a relationship with and seeing how that would work for you. You can go back and negotiate with your current vendors. Many suppliers are willing to share the burden of these tariffs and offer you a bit of a volume discount to make it a little more fair on both ends of it. I know some small business owners don't think they have that clout or that ability to negotiate, but the worst thing they can say is no. So I would ask the question, see if they can do it for you. You can also look at bulk purchasing at this point right now. So if you can get a deal and get over inventoried on something, if you can get a deal and drive your cost per unit down to order in bulk, which would take your inventory higher, if you have the money to do that, that might be an interesting option for you as well. But you're going to want to go into your supply chain, start grading those suppliers, make sure everyone is, if you're paying top dollar, that they're giving you top quality products and top quality service. But start looking at diversifying and start negotiating and start looking at bulk buys. And then finally, we can focus on efficiency gains and to protect our profit margins. So if you are in that 7 to 10% profit margin, you need to protect that, because once you get below 7%, you're going to start being a little more vulnerable. So how can we protect that 7% profit margin and higher? We've done a lot of shows on this, but you can start investing in productivity tools, automation, AI, things that can get the job done for you at a low dollar value. So for example, our last show we did was on AI virtual assistants, and all of the cool things they can do for you, right? They can answer your phone, they can calendar, they can put information in your CRM, do all that stuff. And you can do that for about, I think she said $100 to $150 per month. That is way cheaper than having someone in your office sitting at a desk answering phones. And they never miss a phone call. And they always ask the right questions. So there are lots of technologies out there that you could use to reduce labor. I'm not advocating for trying to cut your labor force, because I think that's a mistake. And we talked about that in the EAD episode 2 shows ago, where when we're riding this out and we don't know what's happening in the economy, and sometimes we'll just stretch our workforce. Actually, it wasn't the EAD episode. It was the great hiring freeze. A lot of people are waiting to see. And so they kind of need someone, but they're saying, I'm just going to ride my people a little harder and wait and see what happens. And we talked about how bad an idea that is. And if you want to know why, go back and listen to that episode. But we're in that same situation. So if you're sitting saying, I could really use an extra body or two, but my profit margins are getting pretty skinny and I'm not sure about what's going to happen here in the future, look at some productivity tools, AI, for example. So maybe you have someone sitting at your front desk who went to school for marketing, but they spend 50% of their time answering phones. And you're thinking, man, I'd really like to amp up my online presence to try to bring in some new business. Well, if you got a virtual AI virtual assistant for $150 a month, and then you can move that person to 90% marketing to kind of help you do that. These are the kind of things that I'm recommending. We never recommend just kind of cutting bodies and replacing them with automations at scale anyway. But these are the things we're talking about. Instead of stretching your people, if you can find some automation or technology or AI to fill some gaps, to take the pressure off your people that aren't going to affect your profit margins or could actually add to your profit margins, that could be really cool. You want to start questioning every expense right now. So I've done this in my business. I've audited everything I have going on in my business. And there's a lot of stuff that you sign up for, or programs you sign up for, or reoccurring payments you make that you forget about. And as my client says, we gotta find those pennies, right? Stop those pennies from walking out the door. And if you can find a couple of those things that are happening, or renegotiate a contract, or find an automation to take over a software you're spending tens of thousands of dollars on. Now we're talking about bringing more money to that bottom line, protecting that profit margin benchmark, and keeping ourselves profitable. Double down on high margin offerings and phase out and reprice low margin ones. So I know a lot of us, we've done shows on this in the past too, that we fall in love with our core product sometimes, even though it's not our moneymaker. And this is a good time to look at your products and say, okay, where are we truly making money? If we have a dog that is kind of a labor of love, something, maybe a core product that helps fire up the company, but it now is a low performer, a low margin, low performing product, maybe it's time to kind of phase those out and really focus on your core offerings that are higher margin and higher selling. Also, look at your bank reserves. Let's not, maybe now is not the right time to be spending on CapEx. Let's try to keep that plus $100,000 in the business, or whatever you need to keep operating for a couple months to protect yourself there. And then at the end of the day, let's just be monitoring everything. Now is a great time to get into your weeds, into the weeds of your business, and really start understanding the business. And I'm not saying the business owner go do it, but you have people that can do it. So these monthly meetings, you might want to start focusing on these things, giving these out as projects. Who's going to start renegotiating our contracts? Who's going to dive into redundancy and wasted expenses on software? Who's going to dive into AI and automation? All of these cool things to keep you afloat. 87% of businesses that either meet or exceed their expectation are those who have adapted rather than waiting. And that's the main point here. Now is a great time to adapt. The world is changing. There's so many cool things going on out there. I know being a small business owner is about the most stressful thing you can do. We carry a lot of weight. We have employees who rely on us to put food on their table and support their families. We worry about payroll. We worry about our product. We worry about our delivery. We worry about pipeline and sales and stuff coming in. And the last 6-8 months certainly has not been helpful for that, with prices fluctuating all over the place. I think as small business owners, we're always looking for that stability. Times are always the best when the economy is quiet and strong and people are just doing business. And the last 8 months have not been that, but small business owners you guys have showed a ton of resiliency, outperforming your budgets and expectations. It's amazing. And I know some of you are in that vicious cycle of just doing business to keep the doors open. So hopefully you can take some of this advice, have a look into certain different aspects of your business, and find some nickels and dimes that can give you a little breathing room, take a little stress off your shoulders, and get you back to loving your business again. So that's about all I have to say on interest rates, or not interest rates, but inflation and tariffs. I hope it was helpful. I hope you got some value out of the show. Just to shout it out one more time. We really want you guys to get what you want out of the show, and we really want to get it to the people who can value from it. So if you could help us out by subscribing and liking on whatever platform you're listening on, that would be really, really appreciated. Send us a text. Let us know what you'd like us to talk about on the show, or just give us a shout out, or tell us what you don't like about it. And connect with me on LinkedIn. Go to LinkedIn, connect with me, and just let me know you came through the podcast, and I'll be happy to accept that connection request. I hope you got value out of the show. Thanks for listening. I'm Corey Harlock, and I've been your host. And until next time, stop grinding, start growing.